This is Gardening in America, and I'm Ed Hume. This week we're in St. Helens, California, and I'm with Peter Newton at Newton Vineyards, and this is absolutely beautiful, Peter.
Well, thank you. But first of all, it is actually, we call it St. Helena.
All right.
Your version is more like where Napoleon met his comeuppance.
And see, I'm from the state of Washington. We have St. Helens.
Well, of course we do, yes.
Oh, what is this now, kind of like a roof garden? Or?
Well, it is that because the whole Chardonnay cellar is 4 feet underneath us.
Oh my God.
And the first thing we did, having built the cellar, was to need some vegetation to cool it down.
Sure.
So I designed this garden in 1980, I think.
You know, I saw the plans to it. 1981 is
yeah,
what
81. That's
yeah.
Right, yeah.
And you have it, I think, exactly as you planned it, didn't you?
It doesn't always work out that way, but this is as built.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And its first function really is to keep the cellar cool.
Now, in addition to this area, and what would you call this area?
Well, this is known as a parterre.
Yes.
P-A-R-T-E-R-R-E. And it is a form of gardening, really, which was very widely used up until about 1700 all over Europe. And there are lots of them are maintained now, but not many people build them.
That's right.
I chose this design because I couldn't quite see what else to do with this very naked concrete box sitting in the middle with no surround at all.
Oh, and our viewers get to see it from above so they know how beautiful it really is.
Yes, and indeed, of course, in the latter stages of parterre design, they were designed to be seen from above. I mean, as at Versailles, I'm sure that Louis XIV most liked to show his people this great vista from on top of somewhere.
Sure. Now, beyond this, you have a gray garden, kind of. That's beautiful.
That's a lavender garden.
A lavender? Okay.
And we've had fun. That's been here since we started. But the lavenders get too woody and they bring out better ones. And we change them every 4 or 5 years. There are about 15 different kinds of lavender down there.
You know, you have a magnificent technique or ability to combine plants so beautifully. You've used the foliage color, foliage texture, and a little bit of flowers so nicely. Do you combine that naturally?
No, a garden like this, actually these roses here, which are a very good rose, a micro mini rose because they have a tight, neat leaf.
Sure.
So you can shear it like box. They've been here from the beginning, and the Teucrium germander has been, but everything else has been changed as we've experimented with different things. One of the things we're doing here is we're watering from overhead, and a lot of plants don't like being watered from overhead, as you know.
Exactly. Oh, this is beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing it with us. The important thing that our viewers need to know is the gardens are not open to the public, and that's why we really appreciate you sharing them with us and with our viewers. Thanks very much. Look at the beautiful flowers of this lantana. This summer flowering plant is really a nice one to use in the landscape. This is a new patented variety. It's called Patriot Rainbow. In the Patriot series, there are probably about 8 different varieties that are patented. But this is an ultra dwarf variety. It only grows about 12 inches high. But look at the combination of flowers of this variety of rainbow and the beautiful foliage too. This will flower very, very prolifically during the summer season. Here in the greenhouse now, they're producing plants for next year. And not only will there be the baskets, but there'll be the 4-inch pots as well, available to you at that time. Now, what's so nice about this variety is that not only the color and the dwarf habit of growth, but the thing is that it flowers all summer long. Planted in a full sunny location in the garden, and you'll want good drainage in such a location. The other thing that you might want to keep in mind about the lantana too is that they combine well with the other summer flowering plants. So if you use a little bit of white or blue with them, then that even lifts this color even more in the landscape. Lantanas are not heavy feeders. However, it's a good idea to feed them 2 or 3 times during the summer growing season. And what's so nice about them too is that they flower later into the season than a lot of the annuals. So you can keep them in the garden and have them flowering when maybe the petunias and a lot of the other annuals have gone down. So there are some really super varieties of lantanas, particularly in the Patriot series, and this one is the variety of rainbow. They'll be available at your local nursery or garden center. Patriot, the beautiful new variety of lantana, and this is the variety Rainbow. When is the best time to prune trees? I say any time you have a sharp pair of pruning shears in hand is the time to prune them, if they need pruning. However, as you can see, the trees have lost their leaves, and this is a great time to prune them, because now you can see the individual branches and you know which ones to prune off. Now, there are several considerations with pruning this tree. One of them is that the branches are coming over the deck. Another one is for privacy purposes. Another one is the power lines above. You want to keep the trees, of course, out of them. How do you decide what branches to prune and how to prune them? Well, let's just take an example here. Where this branch or where its bud goes off in this direction, if I cut above that point, the new growth will be in that direction. On the other hand, if I cut above this point here, then the new branch will be out in this direction. So we can greatly determine how a plant is going to develop simply by pruning above the proper bud. Now also keep in mind, any branches that crisscross, like some of these back here in the back, or that rub together, the weaker of the two should be removed. And also you'll notice this one here is damaged. This is actual freeze damage. So we may want to cut that out. That's another reason for cutting out branches. Now, any of the branches that come out on the undersides of the main branch, that shades that lower branch, and consequently that's not going to produce fruit. So that branch below needs to be cut out as well. If we do that, that makes all the difference in the world. Then the one branch is not shading the others. And we like to get air circulation and sunlight exposure into the tree. So let's get started. Well, you can see it looks like we've been pretty severe here, but it was needed. This tree had not been pruned, and consequently it was totally out of hand. Normally, I would suggest that you not prune more than a third at any one time. And you'll notice here that we made a couple pretty large cuts. I would suggest that they be treated with a tree healing compound. Anytime you get into a cut over about your thumb size, it's a good idea because that protects the cut then from any insect or disease entrance, and particularly in wet climates from algae and mosses from accumulating here in any dieback taking place. But the important thing is we've opened up the tree and allowed for good air circulation and sunlight exposure, gotten it out of the wires and also out of the camellia as well. So just keep that in mind. Good, simple pruning, common sense, and you'll do a good job of taking care of your trees. This is a great time of the year to pot up some bulbs for color during the winter, or they'd make excellent holiday gifts. And it's a very simple process. It only takes a few weeks for them from the time you pot them until they come in bloom. Now this is a variety called Paper White Narcissus, and the fragrance from these is just absolutely outstanding. And so you'll not only enjoy the beauty of the bulbs, but the fragrance as well. Notice that this one is planted in a low container, which is a great idea, but it's planted in gravel. This one here is incorrectly planted. It's planted in a low container as well, but it's planted in a very soft decorative rock, and you can see the bulbs are falling apart. And by the time they get the stems and the flowers, they're going to be out here and not really too attractive at all. So let's just quickly show you a couple things that you can do. Here's another thing you can do, by the way. You can take a hyacinth glass, take a bulb and just set it right on top of the hyacinth glass. The roots will develop below and the foliage above, and the fragrance of the flower will be very enjoyable as well. I'm going to just take a small pot here, and you'll notice I have decorative rock in the bottom, but it's a heavy rock. It's not a light rock at all. Now, this is how simple it is. This is only large enough to put 2 bulbs. But I have to be very careful that they do not touch each other. Okay, that's really important. And is what I'll do then is just fill around them like so with the decorative rock. And then the last procedure is a very easy one. Fill in the water. And you only want the water to come up to about the bottom of the base of the bulbs. That's all. So it's a very simple process. Now this needs to be set aside somewhere probably in a little bit of a dark area and a little bit cool until the roots develop. Give them about 3 or 4 weeks. And you'll notice the new growth starting, or the growth will start a little bit more on these bulbs. Then it's ready to be brought out and the new foliage will develop and the flower. Now, while I was buying some of these bulbs today, I noticed this container also at the garden center. And you can do exactly the same thing, because what's inside here is the pot, the soil. In fact, there's even the rock to put across the top if you want to, and the bulbs. So it's a self-containing unit. Or you can just take a regular pot with soil. I'll take out some of the soil, put the bulb in, and cover over the top so just the top of the bulb stands out like so. And again, I would do, instead of 1, because I did this so quickly, I would do 3. If you can do any odd number, 3, 5, 7, that's the best way to go. But what a great way to provide some color in the home during the winter season, or to give as a holiday gift. And these are one of the best, the paper whites or Grand Soldier. A lot of you may not know it, but I do a weekly syndicated radio program of questions and answers, and that gives me a unique opportunity to hear what your garden questions are. So today I'd like to share a few of them with you from our listeners. And one of the questions that's asked most frequently, in fact this last week, is, when do you prune fruit trees? That's easy. Anything, this is a peach tree, anything that has a stone in the fruit, so it would be peaches, apricots, plums, cherries, are pruned in the autumn. So you would prune them before the first of the year. Then the apples and the pears, of course, then you would prune in January or February during the winter dormant season. It's as simple as that. Now, another question that's been asked a lot on recent programs, in fact this last week, is what about glads? So I dug a few glads in the garden just to show you. And the question is, do you leave the glads in all winter or do you dig them? Now, we live in a moderate winter climate where the temperature usually only gets down into the teens or so, so I leave my glads in all winter. If it gets much colder, you may want to dig them and store them in a storage shed or a garage, or maybe in the utility room or under the house, a place like that. But the second question is, what about these little bulbs that form on the glads? Well, in the trade, we call these bulblets, and those are new bulbs. They won't bloom for a couple of years, but take them off and process them and store them as well and plant them out next spring, because they're going to flower in a couple years for you. I always like to wash the bulbs, by the way, and I usually don't dig them when they have green stems like this. Let the stems dry first. And in fact, you'll see that with some of the bulbs right here. The stems are pretty well dried and they're ready now to be stored. Now, here's another question that came up several times. In fact, the last 2 or 3 weeks, people have been asking about it, and it's these gorgeous hydrangeas. Let me cut the flower just so you know what I'm talking about. That's kind of over the hill hydrangea, but nevertheless, that's what it is. Now, here's what happens. When do you prune them is what the question is. And I pruned all of the foliage off of this particular stem for one reason. I want you to see how ugly they are during the winter. That's what the whole plant looks like. And so the tendency is for a person to go in and right at the ground, prune it off. You notice I didn't prune it off. First of all, it's the wrong time of the year to prune the hydrangea. But the second thing is that if we prune it off, then we're going to get lots of foliage growth, but no flowers. So by all means, prune them in, about mid-February or so, but prune them no more than halfway to the ground. I hope our radio listeners' questions help you a little bit in your own gardening. Today we're in Rutherford, California at Rancho Okemos, and I'm with the general manager, Okemos. Otto, where is Rutherford?
We're in the very heart of the Napa Valley. It's a small little village right in between Napa and Calistoga, and right amongst all the wineries here.
I was going to say you're in wine country.
Exactly, yes.
You know, one of the biggest problems that our viewers have and ask us about all the time are really small, limited area gardens. And here you have a beautiful courtyard in a very small area, and it's very intimate.
Well, thank you very much. The lady who built the place about 11 years ago, Mary Morton Tilden, wanted to put something of a Spanish hacienda inn in the middle of the Napa Valley, and she felt that putting a garden such as this, intimate, warm, rustic, in the middle of her inn would really be the centerpiece of hospitality here.
Yeah. You know, I want to ask you, I noticed that throughout the garden here you have light fixtures, so you obviously have night lighting.
Exactly.
But you get some really interesting little characters on each of those lights.
Yeah, again, she designed all of the light fixtures, almost look like lily pads or something of that, and having different insects playing instruments, different birds, peacocks and such, all perched on top of them and everything. It gives it a really gorgeous look both in the daytime as well as the night.
What about the fountain, too?
She wanted to have the garden area here to be the central part of the inn, and she wanted her fountain, one of her art pieces, to be the central part of the garden itself.
And it looks like she just used things probably that she got nearby.
Exactly. It was pretty much a work in progress while the inn itself was being built up around it.
Now, I noticed one other thing. You get a little bit cool here at night, but in the garden here you have bird of paradise.
Yeah, bird of paradise. We also have a few citrus trees. It's really nice. The inn is so small and so warm, it creates almost its own microclimate with the sheltering that it provides for these plants that we have within the garden area.
And it's what's been used so nicely too. I noticed, for example, Daphne odor over there, which is a very fragrant plant.
Very much
so. Yeah, and then in addition to that, the sound of the pool too just makes a very intimate, nice area for very small.
It really is. It sets itself apart very well, and each different element is really nice. It's very avant-garde in regards to the fact that we have some very traditional California-style plants here, and then some very different things like the bird of paradise, which kind of set it aside, and it makes a very nice combination.
Thanks, Otto. As we leave Rancho Okemos, I want you to see the beautiful tile mural here at the inn. And next time you're in the Napa Valley, this would be a great place for you to visit. We're in St. Helena, and I'm with Peter Newton at Newton Vineyard. And Peter, this is your home residence garden, isn't it?
That's right.
It's how many gardens do you have here altogether?
Well, we've really got 11 separate garden rooms.
Oh, and they're absolutely beautiful.
Different with a different theme in each one.
Yes, and you know what I like here? You've used all kinds of different plant material, and you know every plant here, don't you?
Oh yes, because I made the choice of what to put here, which means the mistakes as well as the things that look okay.
What garden are we in here?
We're in the water garden, and it's very, very much intended to be a water garden, not a swimming pool, though that's of course what we use it for.
It's absolutely beautiful. But up behind us on the hillside here, you have a different garden.
Well, we've got a series of rose arbors, as we call them, 4 of them with a whole mass of climbing roses, which are a fantastic show in the spring. And then we have a stream coming down the mountain, which goes into what we call the lotus pool, which is sitting in amongst all those conifers which I've collected over the years.
Now tell us out front a few of the gardens that you have.
First one is the English garden, so called because it was full of English perennials, which typically are not easily found in the United States. So that's becoming less true because they're now a greater availability of plant material as the popularity of perennial gardening, has increased. And then we went from there into the weeping garden.
It's beautiful.
So called because it's every single tree in it is a weeping tree.
Yes.
And that's where there's that great curtain of Cedrus atlantica glauca pendula, the curtain of weeping cedar.
Beautiful, yes.
And the important thing was not to be able to look from one garden straight into the next. So
Sure.
I had a great need for screens in between each garden.
And then the next garden is
The next
Chinese
garden is a rose garden, which is really a fairly, in some ways, the easiest garden to design because it's such a, the theme of geometric rose beds with separated by grass paths
Yes.
is you know, it's been tried for so long, and it doesn't quite the same level of imagination.
And then the next garden is the Chinese garden.
Then we go from there into the Chinese garden,
Wow.
which is of course there because my wife is Chinese.
It's beautiful.
And that's a garden which is her design, but which I executed, and is of course totally different in concept from any other garden here.
Now, I need to tell our viewers that Newton Vineyards is not open to the public.
Right.
So it's so nice of you to share it with our viewers so that they can get some of the ideas that you've used so magnificently in this garden.
Well, thank you.
Thanks very much. That's all the time we have this week. Hope you can join me at the same time next time. And remember, our relationship with the planet today is tomorrow's future. Have a great week.